Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree.
Alrighty now.
Peter, it sounds like maybe you're on the other mic or something.
Oh, maybe. Hold on, stand by. Thanks for noticing that. I forgot to change that in my setting.
That should sound better.
Oh, so good. It's like sex in my ear.
The Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90.com. Shop Soccer90.com for all your soccer gear, FC Dallas, North Texas SC, U.S. Men's National Team. I mean, listen, they got everything, man. Go over there. They got clubs all through the Premier League, all throughout the world. Get what you want. Get the teams you follow. Get that FC Dallas gear. Soccer90.com. Use code Third Degree at checkout. 20% off your order. Some exclusions apply.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast. I am told this one is number 210 of your favorite little podcast about Football Club Dallas. Hello, I am Peter, and we're all back together again because arriving all the way from the motherland, he did come back, Buzz. He actually returned back to Texas. The pride of Luton. Well, okay, sorry. The second most prideful part of Luton, other than the football team. Dan Crooke. Howdy, Dan.
You all right? Yeah, why wouldn't I come back? I left that shit already.
Well, because you're on the precipice of getting promoted to the Premier League, and you might want to stay and experience that.
I would love to be. I'd love to be at the games for that, but you know, money and availability and everything, unfortunately. So I'll just have to catch a Premier League game, hopefully.
All right, and get your Peacock subscription renewed. I will ask you to, as best you can, as quickly as you can, in one word, sum up your experience of the Luton-Middlesbrough match that you went to.
Home.
Love it. That's a sweet answer. That actually gives me
kind of cute
sports tier.
I mean, you know, there's nothing. You know, the atmosphere in MLS is great. People try new things and things are very good, but you know, it's only ever like a dedicated section. It's never a whole stadium or you know, just having 10,000 people singing Watford get battered everywhere they go.
Even when you're not playing Watford.
Fans shit about, you know, having to go to school the next morning. It's just fun. It's, you know.
I love the fact that you guys pick on Watford even in games where you're not playing Watford. I love that. That's fantastic.
That's what rivals do.
Yeah, well, we don't do enough of that around here. And there he is, your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net, the good Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Peter, I was concerned that you weren't going to come back after those last two FC Dallas performances.
You know why I'm back?
Why's that?
Because I watched neither one of them.
No.
First one. Well, okay. So my excuse, because I know it's weird that the host of a club-specific podcast isn't watching the games. But one, I have excuses. One is that technically it's not my fault, and two, I don't give a crap about the other one. So. The St. Louis game never got posted to Apple TV, to the best of my understanding, because I wasn't able to watch it live.
Okay.
And U.S. Open Cup, I had a concert last night anyway, and you know I've stated my position that I'm not. That's not my jam. I'm MLS Cup or bust guy.
You're no Open Cup guy.
At least at this point.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Let's accomplish the other goal of winning the real trophy, the really one that I want, and then we'll go back to worrying about Open Cup.
Yeah, it's a stance. Okay, you're fine.
I did come back. I have not watched either game. I know the results, obviously, but so let's start there. Let's talk about the fact that poor Dan got all the way back from England. Did you attempt to go to this, Dan?
No. Jet lag has been kicking my ass up until about 2 days ago.
Well, you sound pretty energetic at this point. So, Buzz, you were there. It was a great crowd. I got a text from somebody talking about how amazing the atmosphere was, and I looked at the radar and went, well, it's not going to last much longer. And sure enough, it did get rained out, and it was 0-0 at the time, I think.
Yes.
Was it a good game?
Not notably. On the upside, I had a premonition, and this was the game I chose to go sit in the press box. I haven't done that in about a year, and so that was a good pick for the weather that came in. But because, as we talked about in advance, because St. Louis City plays the Red Bull system, which is a heavy pressing system, unlike Dallas, who does not press, even though everyone says they do. They don't press in high volume anyway. St. Louis does press in high volume, and that meant the game was basically junk. The passing percentages were 50-60% or something like that, and Dallas basically abandoned the middle because they couldn't build through the middle, so they were trying to build around the side or just kick it over the top more often than not, and that makes for some ugly soccer. So it wasn't looking particularly pretty. It was really poor. St. Louis doesn't try and play out of the back at all, so basically it looked like a 1980s championship game, where the ball just got booted back and forth a lot. On the upside, I would say that it might have actually been Leget's best game of the year for the first 50 minutes. That was basically like the one positive thing I came away with from that game, other than also they didn't let St. Louis score. So those two things all considered, the game was at least somewhat positive, even if it wasn't particularly pretty. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the rain came and washed it out, and now we have a rescheduled June 7th for the rest of it. And if people are confused, yes, you just pick it up at minute 50 with the same players on the field, the same subs available. You start from minute 50 and you go. You just finish the game.
Yeah, if you really want to be an MLS nerd, go read the page that defines all the terms and the rules tied around restarts of games at later dates and what happens if you have players that were in the game that are now injured or unavailable. It's it's like, why didn't you just I think everybody should know the general FIFA rule is once you start a game and you get into the second half, and if a game has to be abandoned, that can be the end of the game. That's the FIFA rule.
Yeah.
It's MLS's rule to go ahead and continue to play it.
Well, most people try and play it out. And historically speaking, MLS will try and play it the next day. But because St. Louis had a cup game on Tuesday and Dallas on Wednesday, they chose to just push it to June when there's more open space for both teams.
Which is crazy. Now they've got to get on a plane and come down here for literally a 40-minute.
Yeah. Well, St. Louis is not that far, so.
I guess not. So I guess my next question is, does Dallas have a reason to feel like, did they get unlucky that the game got rained out at that point, or did they get lucky that the game got rained out at 50 minutes?
I suppose that depends on what form they look like come June. No.
I mean, if at that point when the game stopped, was it like, this is getting ready to get this? They're not going to win this game, or they're wait, oh no, they're actually in a good position to win this thing.
No, it was pretty equally pinballish for both teams. I mean, either team was looking really threatening on the goal, But that's the point I was going to try and make, was that Dallas has been unthreatening on the goal ever since Alan Velasco got hurt. And so if there is a silver lining for FC Dallas, it's that the game stopped, and now, presumably since Allen is back, by the time your June whatever game rolls around, Allen will still be available, hopefully, and perhaps Paul Arriola will have recovered from his injury that he picked up in this game, and perhaps Leggett will have found his form again. So, if your team is playing better a month from now, then yes, it is a good thing in your favor. But it's not a case where Dallas was left off the hook. I don't think either team would have looked at that game and thought, oh, that's a really great game, because Dallas is just as effective at stifling the other team and denying goal opportunities as St. Louis is. So they do it different ways, but both of them were basically really good at not allowing a lot of opportunities, which is what you get in that kind of game.
Yeah. And did I get an accurate report that the atmosphere prior to the rainout was as amazing as reported to me?
Yes, it was. In fact, I believe they announced the sellout, but I don't remember for sure. But what I remember sitting there and looking, and I thought to myself, well, there are more people actually sitting in this stadium than they have been for the previous sellouts all this year. So it was more, in my mind, it was more like direct butts actually in the seats than it had been in previous games, which was, even though the weather was coming and people knew the weather was coming, it was a really nice, I thought, turnout.
Well, that's good. Well, I guess we'll see. So the makeup, the last 40 minutes will get played on, you said June the 7th.
7th, yeah.
And do we know are they just letting people in as they want to, or do you have to have a ticket, or do we have any idea about how that's being handled?
Well, if you have a ticket from the game before, then your ticket is still basically good. If you had a paper ticket, I don't know how you do that, but they're all electronic these days. So that, you can it just shows up theoretically. And they also gave everybody that had a ticket for that game, at least I think everybody, a discount to another ticket for another game, sort of as a make good. You still get your ticket for that game if you want it. And then they also give you 50% off a ticket for another game, down the line. I think it's the Nashville game in June also. They're trying to make good everybody that come to the game. I imagine I think it's a Wednesday, the crowd won't be very great for the last 40 minutes of a game. But, if they get 10,000 people to show up for that little bit, that would be considered in my mind a victory. I don't think it'll even be that many.
Yeah. It'll also be interesting what the state of the season is in at that point.
Yeah.
It'll be really weird. I haven't looked at the schedule. How does that fit? Is that like really squeeze in too many games in a short period of time?
It's between the game against Nashville on the 3rd and the game against Portland on the 11th, at Portland on the 11th. So it's on a Wednesday between a Saturday Sunday combo. So it's just shifts the midweek to a later time. But at that point, you're getting closer to Leagues Cup and that kind of stuff too. So. The schedule opens up a little bit in July. It's not quite as dense. I think it'll be okay. Especially it's not a full game. It's basically not even a half of a game. It's going to be just like a little run out. It's not really going to affect anything in terms of workload to be worried about. At that time.
Okay. All right. Well, to be determined, as they say. And I was watching your post-game reaction to it, and you were making the comment that, well, this actually kind of works out in the team's favor because now Nico doesn't have to rest people for the Open Cup game, which was last night against Nashville in Nashville. And that did not go well, did it, Buzz?
Well, I was surprised that even post-game at post St. Louis, Coach even mentioned that they wouldn't have to rest everybody. But the problem was that for me, that game was lost in the lineup card because they were missing Nkosi for injury, which we all knew it was unlikely he was making it. They were hoping.
Wait, what game was lost in the lineup card? The Open Cup game? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't make that clear. So Nkosi, they were hoping to get back, and then he didn't make it. Martinez was suspended from a red card against Kansas City in the Open Cup last year. Paul Arriola was hurt. And Velasco was coming back from injury, so they chose not to start him. So they ended up with the most janky-ass lineup I've ever seen. We've seen a 3-4-3 before, and it never has really worked good. This team doesn't know how to play it correctly. And on top of that, they had to put guys like Siki and Sebeling at like the underneath 10 kind of role, along with – it just was a mess. They ended up with Giovanni and Farfan, both of whom have played some – some center back before, but to put both of them at center back in a back three and then have Junka and Tumasi on the other side, you got 5 real heavy defenders across the back rather than sort of 3 in mids like you're kind of really supposed to do in that shape. And 2 of the 3 center backs are not actually center backs. And having in Sebeling and Leggett as sort of your underneath 10s, you can kind of fit Leggett in there, but you definitely don't fit in Sebeling under there. And so basically Ferreira was on an island by himself, and he was up there all alone. So the longer the game went on, the more and more he came back. And basically Dallas had no chance at all, in my mind, to actually score in that game. And the worst thing is that he then, because he wasn't willing to play Nolan and start Nolan, he wasn't willing to start Corsa, he wasn't willing to start Kamungo. Because of all those 3 things, he ended up with this mess of a lineup. And there was no real spots for O'Brien because O'Brien can't wing back and he can't play that underneath 10 role. So the formation was a mess. And by the end of the game, Edwin Surreal was playing center back for a good almost 20 minutes of the game. Kamungo was playing wing back on one side, and he had no idea what he was doing. And that's where the second goal came from, because he was 50 yards up the field when Jimmy Maurer tried to play him a ball that he can't kick it that far anymore. So it only went like 30 yards, and they immediately turned it over in that zone. So for me, that game was lost in the lineup. And it doesn't, a lot of people were talking about effort and intensity and things like that. And I'm like, man, sometimes when you look at the lineup card and you go, what the hell is this? You know, you walk out there with a mindset that's not that great. And I think it was obvious on the field that their mindset wasn't that great, and they got stomped, basically. So it was not a good game. And in my mind, that was lost when you did the lineup. That game was lost.
All right. So I'm going to ask the obvious question, which is, because when I saw the lineup on Twitter, I was just as confused, and my immediate reaction is, oh, he's Nico's decided to use this as an experiment, an opportunity to experiment, and he's not serious about this game. And which if that's true, that's pretty significant considering the fact that the trophy's named after the patriarch of the family that owns the club, and they've historically taken this tournament really seriously.
Well, I don't know that it was. By the way, the lineup they drew and they put on the FC Dallas official Twitter was so out of whack that Garrett Meltzer had to tweet out what it actually was verbally, and then I drew it up. It was a 3-4-3. Even the talent on the TV was very confused about what Dallas was doing and had no idea what they were playing. But the overall point was that because you were afraid to play guys on your team. And believe me, this coach always says everybody on our roster can help us, but yet his actions show that that's not the true. Because you weren't willing to play kids and inexperienced players, you ended up with guys playing out of position. And so your whole lineup was disjointed, and Nashville rotated, but they rotated guys in appropriate positions, and they were able to go to their bench and double down and play a shape that they like more. Not a shape, a tactic they like more. And they went even more low block and countered attack, which again, we know is a Dallas bugaboo. They can't handle that. And that's when they tore Dallas apart in the second half. So Dan, I don't know if you watched it, but for me, like from the get-go, it was just a mess all over the field.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised anyone was caught off guard by it, because the players couldn't even hold the shape they were supposed to be in. Emma Tumasi played more as a fullback than a wing-back, which pushed Giovanni Jesus over, and they ended up playing really as a back four when it was supposed to be a back three with two wing-backs. Junker played more as a traditional left mid than kind of like an attacking fullback. It was just a mess. It was like you'd taken 11 guys that never played together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, I'm going to go back. Is this a function of Nico thinking he's taking this seriously, or is this him like, hey, I'm just going to do with what I've got the best I can?
I don't think he's ever going to admit that they wouldn't take it seriously. I honestly think that my analysis of this coach over a year and a half now is that he honestly thinks these older, more experienced players are the right choices all the time. And he is just, I'm not going to call it terrified, but he has no faith at all that a young kid, a young, inexperienced player is the right choice. This was a lineup designed to be conservative and try and hold the game to next to nothing, like it is, like they do on the road all the time. So if you follow that philosophy, this looks like, to me, a guy trying his best to grind something out when he knows he's screwed. I, on the other hand, think when you're screwed, why not take a couple of those kids? You only needed two of them to make it work the way you want to play. That would have been enough. Just give Nolan a chance, or even don't even use the guys you had without changing formation. It may be that halfway into the game, they decided that they're right, this formation sucks. And that's why Tuamasi was playing deep. Maybe they went to more of a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-3-1 kind of vibe without it being clearly obvious, because even when they did, it was still a mess all over the place.
All right. So I'm going to ask the obvious question. Isn't it a problem that the head coach of FC Dallas is risk averse to playing the kids? I mean, this is FC Dallas. Like, this is the team that plays the kids.
I mean, I think so. I mean, it's one of the reasons why coming into this season, I was so adamant that they loan out Parker and Smith, because I knew neither one of those guys, or I was not new. I was very confident based on previous behavior that neither one of those guys was ever going to play. Norris, I'm not worried about him never playing this season because he's a bit younger and it's perfectly reasonable for him to play for North Texas SC. But Corsa's a bit older. Now, if you don't have any confidence that you can't start Corsa in a game, then why is he even here? I know he's not 27, but still, you're still talking about, and Kamungo you've signed and you've actually played him some. So if you don't have any faith at all that guy can start, I'm just really confused by his complete lack of any belief that certain guys can get out there and contribute at all. Meanwhile, 19 and 18-year-old, last year, Alan Velasco is a lock starter every time. So it's like, it's not necessarily just young. There's something about them that he has absolutely no faith in, and I don't know what it is.
Okay. Well, that's an unfortunate result, I suppose. Although for those of us who are part of the hashtag MLS Cup or Bust campaign, it actually works in our favor. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of workload, it actually just makes your month.
Oh, yeah, it really doesn't, because you've got 3 guys that are a little bit delicate that just did 90 minutes in Paxton, Jesus, and Marco Farfan.
Well, at least they don't have to play a follow-up game in 2 weeks, is what I'm saying. They don't have another game in May.
Oh no, but they've still got to play on Saturday.
That's true.
Well, they were gonna have to play on Saturday, win or lose. I'm just pointing out now they don't have to worry about the next Open Cup game. Is my point. Yeah, that's my point. Were there any bright spots at all from the game in Nashville? Either one of you?
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I thought Junker looked decent. Kind of the only bright spot for me, really.
You know, I thought that while it was pretty clear that Kamingo has no idea how to play wingback, unsurprisingly, it's not like it's a surprise that he doesn't have any idea. But that aside, you know, his directness and positivity, I think, still show. Like I didn't walk out of that game thinking, well, that was terrible. I walked out thinking, you know what, you might as well just have started that guy. And I'm okay. Why don't we start that guy at some point? You know, now that Paul's out, you know, because it's not like you're getting a great deal out of Oberon. So it's like, you know, if that's a positive to walk away not thinking that guy sucked, and thinking I wouldn't mind seeing a little more of that guy, then I guess that's a positive. I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, Edwin Surreal played center back. That was fascinating. I don't know if that's for 15 minutes. So I don't know whether that's a positive or not, but it's certainly interesting.
Well, I will say, as this gives me a great opportunity to remind people that one of the great things about, or one of the great benefits of being part of Buzz's Patreon is you get to be a part of good, smart conversations and discussions, friendly discussions about the team on Buzz's Discord. And one of the ones that I saw that I thought was a really interesting conversation was a back and forth between multiple people about Cerrillo and his performance in this particular game. And a lot of people's concern that maybe, you know, he's in his head or he's just not going to turn out to be the player we wanted to be. And I'm wondering what your point of view on that is, Buzz.
Well, I think that there's an expectation that people want Edwin to be really, really good, to be a homegrown like Jesus and Paxton are. And he's just not quite that same level. You know, I think he's going to be a good pro for a long time.
Has he peaked?
Oh, no. He
Okay.
won't peak until he's 26, 27, like everybody else. You know, the debate between those two players is I don't think Facundo is any better. And I think there's a lot of ways he's worse in the sense that he's very static. He stays in the middle. He does a lot of emergency defending in that portion of the field, and he is pretty good at progressive passing, and he does show well to relieve pressure. Those two things are true, but like if you look at the St. Louis game, they were heavy triggering on him. Anytime the ball went into his feet, they pressed hard into his feet, and I was like, that's going to be the thing that's going to cost them the game, was a turnover right there in front of the box. So the problem isn't necessarily that I think Edwin is better than Facundo, because I don't think I can claim that he's better right now. There are things that he does do better, like against in the Open Cup against Nashville, there were multiple times where he received the ball in really tight coverage spaces, and he was able to shield guys off and make ball control moves and dribble away from pressure that I just know for a fact Facundo can't do. They're different players, but Edwin has his deficiencies. Like the second goal, Kamingo was, again, like I mentioned, was caught like 50 yards up, and because Jimmy Maurer can't kick the ball that far anymore, the ball ended up short, and they ended up with no left back. And so Edwin ran all the way over to that corner and then put himself in shape to deny the run to the end line on the cross, and the dude cut back. That happens when he got beat, cut into the inside. Well, everybody from time to time gets beat on a cut back to the inside. What you have to have happen is you have to have your other center back or your other midfielder close down, and that didn't happen. And that happens all the time to lots of people. It happened. That's how Fafa scored on the other side. Mm-hmm. So that's a mistake, but it's a mistake people make. And I always say that no one is mistake-free at this level. Edwin's never going to be a 90-minute mistake-free player. The debate for me comes down to the idea that one of them gets paid $900,000 and the other one gets paid $150,000, and one of them is 22 and one of them is 30. So if you're going to invest time and the players are basically equal, you might as well, in my mind, invest time in the one who actually will get better for the next 5 or 6 years, and that's Edwin. So that's why, to me, it's play Edwin all the time. But I totally understand people's frustration with him. He's not great. You know, he's not a game-breaking, game-changing best 11-6. If you had one, this team would be significantly better. So I understand people's complaints, you know, but that's why I would play him every single game versus Facundo. But, you know, and I don't know whether Dan agrees with me or not, but, you know, it's not always about like who's right better at this second. And it comes back to a bigger point that I made, is that I've made before that I think Nico Estevez coaches this team to not lose games. He's coaching like he's a mid-table team in Spain, to grind out points, to not get relegated, to keep himself in touch with the really, really great teams. That's how he's coaching. Whereas I want him to coach as if 2 years from now, I might make a run at the cup, and I need to develop guys that are in their low 20s, not play guys that are 30 years old. So there's a two difference in ideology there that's causing a short circuit in my mind between the decisions he's making and what I would want him to make. But again, you know, who the hell am I? We're just dudes on a podcast, but still, that's where I get frustrated.
We are dudes on a podcast. Dan, because the formation is wonky and the tactics are unusual, how much do you feel like you learned about, you know, kind of a surprisingly rare appearance from Ensebling, who we haven't seen a lot this year, Kamungo, you know, we got to see Korka for the first time. Do you have any sense that any of those guys showed you something, or you felt that made you feel good or bad about them?
I'd rather just write that entire performance off. It was a monumental waste of time.
Wow, that's too bad.
I mean, I thought, you know, Corsa, the little bit of time he had, you know, he looked assured on the ball, looked comfortable in the challenge.
Does he look tall by chance?
I mean, I would hope so. He's like 6'4", isn't he?
Okay, good. I just want to make sure he looks at least imposing a little bit. At least looks imposing.
He looks skinny. He's gangly.
Oh, okay.
Buzz sort of asked if I agreed about Edwin. Yeah. It's kind of not wonderful options there. But you invest time with the guy that's going to have the longevity. I think Edwin's role long term could be like if you get a good 6, is to be that reliable backup guy that could play not only as a pure 6, but an 8 in a pinch, even centre back apparently. But yeah, it's kind of like the Emma and Nanu debate of last year. You're not arguing about Messi versus Christian Coleman by any stretch of the imagination. It's two firmly mid-table MLS options that aren't the key point of your team, and unfortunately in this case is in one of the more important positions in the team.
Here's how badly coach didn't want to play Corsa at center back. He played him at right back.
Well, I mean, the thing is, he changed the entire lineup, right?
Yeah.
He went for a back 3 because in his mind, he's got Ibiaga's fit, Tafare's injured, Martinez is serving his suspension from the red card at Kansas City last year. He only has one fit centre back. Well, he has 2 on the bench that he just didn't want to use.
Yeah.
He could pick either one of them, play the 4-3-3. Like you said, just rotate it the same way that Nashville did. Nashville made 10 changes. They rotated everything bar one centre-back. They started Leao, who hadn't played since February, could only go 45 minutes. They made 3 changes at the half. Like, it was comfort. Like, they didn't open it up into the second half, but their press in the first half destroyed FC Dallas. Dallas did nothing. Granted, Nashville didn't do a whole lot either, but they had they were kind of in the ascendancy in possession at least, and knew the flow of the game. Dallas, like you said, from the lineup card, it just kind of ruined the whole thing.
All right, I'm going to ask the next obvious question, which is, are we at a point where we're starting to wonder and ask questions about Nico as a manager for this team?
I'm at a point where I have to alter my thinking and trying to anticipate what he's doing, in the sense of I really have come to believe that he's not coaching for the long haul. You know, I have conversations with him where he's talked about coaching for the season. You know, they play in the season, they coach in the season, they're trying to win games in the season, not lose games in the season. And then that everybody they have on their roster is considered potential to help them, or we believe everyone on our roster can help us. At the end of the season, we'll make decisions about whether that's true or not, whether those guys can help us and how I need to make changes or not. Well, I think as a coach, in my opinion, you need to be thinking 2 or 3 seasons down the line. I think if you coach just season to season to season, you're never going to, or I'm not never, excuse me. I don't think you'll see the improvement in the guys that are coming along that you should, because you're not investing in them. And this is the key for me, right? This is like, I need to change if I'm going to accurately predict what he's doing and try and understand what he's doing, I have to change the way I think about what he's doing to all about grinding out points now, playing for the now. I think that's a mistake. I think it's the wrong way to do it. I think the guy's a great coach. I'm just not sure that Dan Hunt, who basically runs the team, understands enough. I know Zanata does, but I'm not sure Dan Hunt understands enough to tell him, look, we need to be playing for winning a cup in 2 years, not for winning this game this week, you know? And it comes down to the idea that this organization's bloodline, which is this developing of these players, because they're not going to go spend $15 million on a guy. They're only going to try and develop him from within and spend $3 million on a guy. So it may be a bad fit. I don't know. Like, that's a good coach. I'm just not sure it's the right one right now. I'm a little worried.
All right.
Oh.
No, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, with Lucci, we used to talk about trying to kick some of the academy tendencies.
Yeah.
It's a real, Spain B team tendency to be like, I have this 17-year-old. Alternatively, I have this 30-year-old, because typically that 30-year-old's come down from the first team and is by far and away the best player you have. I just wonder if there's kind of like, that got me where I am, so that's the good thing to default to, is kind of like a thought in the back of his head.
And probably the national team in a lot of ways is the same way. Like, if I'm trying to win games all the time, you know, that 17-year-old kid is rarely Landon Donovan. Usually he's a guy that's a mess and he's not ready. Musa's another one that's rare. That's rare, man. Like, usually you get guys like Dest who have a lot of potential but don't know how to play any defense at all and make a lot of mistakes. So, you know, sometimes you default to your Sebastian Legetts, you know, your who's the Seattle guy?
Yedlin?
No. Well, yeah, good example. I was thinking of the two brothers,
Morris?
Roldan. Thank you. Golly, my brain wasn't working. Yeah, Roldan. You know, those kind of guys are getting spots, you know, when you're going into the cup, right? All of a sudden, younger, interesting guys are out, and these old guys are in. So
that's really great point,
Dan. About coaching for the season. Seattle is a perfect example of a team you would coach for the season, not for not for like 2-3 years down the line.
Okay, so, and I don't mean to be, well, maybe I do mean to be the pot stirrer. But if Dallas proceeds through the rest of the season and they kind of flame out during Leagues Cup and they really flirt with the danger of not qualifying for playoffs and just kind of fart out of the playoffs as well, you think Nico's, and when you throw in there that he also has now demonstrated that he's not a big fan of playing the kids, do you think there's any chance his job is in danger?
Man, I don't know. The owners were just like a week ago talking about how rosy and everything is and how awesome it is.
Well, they're in fourth place.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, like, you remember not last year, excuse me, 2 years ago when Lucci was fired, it was all about the defense has to be better. If our defense is better, we'd be in the playoffs. We have to make the playoffs here. Yes, we understand that we don't have $50 million players, but making the playoffs is the minimum quality of good. Well, they got a guy now that's going to get him into the playoffs every time. This dude will grind out playoffs every single year. Mm-hmm. So it may be that they absolutely love that they think this is fantastic, that this is what they want. I don't like it, but I'm not sure that they have the same mentality that I do, to be honest, about their chances of, maybe they've just resigned themselves that we're going to be is a playoff team and be right under the very best teams all the time. And that's going to be good enough. And maybe it's hard to argue with that. Honestly, it's better than missing the playoffs for a decade like the Dynamo did, so I don't have a good answer. What I've decided, this is the big picture thing I wanted to talk about. is I've been looking at the players that are playing, and I look at the contracts that the team has, and I look at how expensive they are, and the fact that they came into this season with basically no moves. Right? They eventually went and got Jimenez, but that was a couple bit into the season. That wasn't the start of the season. So they really effectively traded a backup for a backup to get Jimenez in. They brought in a backup in Ibeagha, right? They did all kind of like some roster shoring up kind of stuff. Signed a couple of kids that maybe in 4 or 5 years that are be good, but those guys aren't even part of Nico's team really, right? We're watching a team play that in my mind is sort of going through the motions because you have 3 or 4, maybe 5 contracts that you're sort of waiting to expire so you can try and get somebody better. And I think as players, if you're coming into this season, you're watching the team do nothing, and you're watching the coach talk about how we're going to be better because our players are going to progress. If you're those guys that they're looking at to progress, and you're looking at the fact they didn't really do anything to make your team be better, and you're watching all those teams do anything, maybe you're just going through the motions. And so maybe when we look at Areola and we look at Leggett and we look at Facundo or Edwin or we look at Paxton or we look at any of these guys – and we wonder why they're just playing okay, maybe that's why. Maybe the whole team is just treading water, waiting for this year to be over.
It is so strange to be having this tone and this attitude and this vibe when they're in 4th place, a third of the way through the season. But I would tell anybody that's like listening to this and going, dude, these guys are being such bummers. You have to trust that that there's a level of experience between the 3 of us in watching this thing that we have. I feel like, maybe I'm the only one that feels this way. I feel like I can get through a third of an MLS season with my club in particular and have a pretty clear idea of how this thing's going to play itself out. And to me, it just feels like it's just going to be another one of those kind of, not a terrible season, not a great season. It'll just be one of those things, and it'll be one of those seasons we don't really talk about or think about, down the road, which is really disappointing based on how awesome and fun and exciting last season was.
Well, I think you can look at the offense and see that it's not as good as last year. You can look at the defense and you see it's not as good as last year. I just talked to Coach like a week and a half ago. He talked about how the team is not back to where they were at the end of last season. And to underline this idea about this season sort of waiting, contracts ending at the end of this year. Martinez on like $800K, O'Brien on like 4 something, Junka, who's a one-shot signing, Jimmy Maurer, who's in his late 30s, Edwin and Facundo, we've talked about that position, right? Seeking a Sebling, his contract's up. Corsa, 1 year, shot in the dark. There's just a whole big chunk of this roster that are, some of them relatively highly paid, like Facundo, O'Brien, and Martinez, for example, all whose deals are ending at the end of this year. So you have a really good opportunity to sort of reset, and this is like the last ride of those guys. Like if you look around your locker room and you look at those guys, do you go, oh man, we got a cup run in us here? I don't think you do. So you end up with the other guys that are here for many years to come. Your Paxtons, your Ferreira, your Velasco, your Areola, your Leggett, your Farfan, even Ibeagha and Tafare. Like those guys are all 2-3 year contracts. They're sitting there just sort of waiting, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think that's, to me, that's what this club looks like. A team that's waiting for the season to progress so they can move on. And they're just kind of grinding. Doesn't it feel that way?
It does.
We've talked about this coach. This coach is capable of grinding you into the playoffs. He's getting wins and points, wins at home and points on the road when they're not playing that great because he knows how to kill the game. He knows how to grind out points. He knows how to get you into playoffs, and that's why they're 5th right now. And,
what worries me, though, is that with all the positive turnaround in attendance and the atmosphere in the stadium that has improved so much, a lot of that, I think, is a byproduct also of the excitement on the field and how exciting this team could be for very long stretches of many or most of the home games last year. And I just feel like he's constricted that so much that I just wonder how exciting, like if they just continue to grind and hit and miss and they don't play the way they played last season, because I feel like it is different. I just wonder if the shine will come off of this quickly and people will start losing interest. That's what I worry about.
I think the boost in attendance is the result of increase advertising, sales, and effort and energy from the club in a lot of phases, and not necessarily from actual play on the field. They're doing a good job of hyping up some of the young names, I think. That's all part of it. But I think that the general soccer audience is not as dialed in as the
they just like to go to the games
that listen to our podcast. You know what I mean? I mean, it's
that's fair.
The main core audience, like I sit in the stands and people are talking about, they don't even know who players are, let alone like what shape the team plays or how good they are,
All right. Well, very, very strange. And so that leads us to their next game, which is against Austin, in Austin at Q2. And this is really crazy. Austin has not won in their last 7 league games. They've only won twice this year. But I will remind everybody, while they don't have a great record at home, they have only lost once at home, and that was their opening game against St. Louis in that fun-to-remember match. So, Buzz, what do you think Nico has in store for the Broccoli?
Well, the injury report's not out yet, but I don't think Nicosia will be back. So I think you're looking at Martinez and Nibiaga again. I thought Giovanni was terrible on the road again, which leads me to think maybe we might see Tuamasi because he's better and more reliable defensively, particularly on the road. I think that's a pretty likely choice. I think Farfan will be the choice, of course, on the left, and Paz is a given considering that Maurer was not that good. Maybe you're still trying to workload both of those guys on the outside, so you try and bring somebody in at some point. But I think one of the reasons Edwin started the Open Cup game is because coach will want to go back to Facundo, his security blanket on the road. Paxton and Leggett, I'm sure Velasco will be ready to start now that he came off the bench. Jesus is a given. The other wing is the real question mark for me. It'll be Obrian with Areola out, but it shouldn't be. It should be Kamungo, but it ain't going to be. It's going to be Obrian. So you're looking at basically the same sort of standard 11 you always get, except for Areola's hurt. So, and I think Ema will get the nod because of his road defensive ability, and this coach is defensive first, far, far, far and away. And Gio had his second or third crap game on the road. So I think you might be looking at maybe a home road kind of flip-flop, but that position maybe a little bit going forward. And he doesn't have a choice at center back.
I meant to ask this earlier. How did Velasco look in his limited minutes?
Dan, what'd you think?
That nice shot from distance. That god-awful attempt at a dive in the box.
It was bad.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, they were playing so... I don't know. At that point, they were just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck. It was kind of, it's so hard to take too much from that game.
Yeah, I mean, you watch him play and you think, oh man, that dude is so much better than the alternatives that we've been rolling out. The period he's been out really has shown that without him, everyone just keys on Jesus Ferreira and there's nothing else up front because Paul's hurt or in a funk, and then neither Leggett or Paxton get into the box enough, and Obrian's crap. It's makes it real easy to box up Jesus, and he can't do anything. So they really desperately need Velasco. He looks bursty. Looks like he always does.
Hey, you said something there that triggers a conversation. That's a comment somebody made to me the other day, which was they were talking about how Leggett and Paxton don't get in the box enough. And after that conversation, it made me wonder, and you're the person to answer this, Buzz, do you think that's a byproduct of the system, a limitation of the players, or both?
Well, Paxton's always had that problem. That's always been the tiny shortcoming in his game. It's the reason why he's still in Major League Soccer, is that he doesn't get into the box he tries to get into the box, but the last little touch is not De Bruyne, so he's missing. He doesn't get enough goals and assists for a linking 8, definitely not for a free 8. Leggett is capable of it. I don't know why he's not doing it. He's not, you can look at his career numbers and you can look at his numbers last year and you 100% know he's capable of it. Why it's not happening this year is a question, a combination of whatever funk that he's in, a combination of the whole offense being kind of off, the combination of, maybe once Velasco went out and once Ariel's a little hurt, career-wise, 100% Leggett has done it. It's just, maybe it's that magical 30. I'd hate to think it's that. he was injured. Remember, he was injured in camp. He had 2 or 3 injuries that kept him out of all of camp, basically. So, I don't. At 30, you begin to wonder. I'm hoping that's not it, man. I really hope that they're not. He got a new deal. They lengthened his deal probably for a reduction in salary. I would assume. We haven't seen the numbers yet this year. So you got him for a couple of seasons. So hopefully he's going to return to form, because that was a big part of what they talked about coming into this year. Remember, it was like, we now have Leggett for the whole year. What he did for that last month and a half, he's going to do now for the whole 6 months, and it's going to be great. But right now it ain't. So that's part of the problem.
All right, so Dallas, again, travels down to Austin to play the Verde and Negro at 7:30, and I don't know if it's one of the I don't know if it's one of the Apple TV free games or not, so there you go. We'll have to...
Do we just call it a draw now, since their last 3 home games have been draws?
I'd probably at this point take it, yeah, for sure. Actually, no, I mean, Austin's been so bad.
They haven't won since March 4th. In the league.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. They haven't won in their last 7 games, and Dallas historically, other than the playoff game last fall, has played them pretty well because Austin comes at them and gives them space. So I'd like to think Dallas is good enough to go and win that game.
Don't forget, Austin finally learned that lesson in time for the playoff game, that they could...
Stupid Josh Wolf.
That they could kind of adopt that mid-block and frustrate Dallas rather than just trying to be way too open and getting absolutely destroyed.
Yeah. All right, Buzz, so we will move on to the other news related to the US 20 World Cup, and it appears that Dallas will have some level of representation going on there.
Yeah, Antonio Carrera is in the mix. He's not the number 1 keeper.
Is that a surprise?
No.
Okay.
He's been the number 2 keeper for about a year and a half now.
Okay.
It's a surprise if you look back to him maybe 3 years ago. He's really progressed, exploded the last couple of years, but he's been the number 2, on and off for them over the last couple of tournaments. He probably won't get a game, maybe a group game against Fiji or something. He might get that game if you want to rest your Yeah, that guy, and the other Chicago guy, the other guy that's in the mix for the to be number 2 is not going. So that sort of cements Antonio as 2. So he might get a group game maybe, but if he doesn't, no big deal. That for him, that'll be much just about the experience of going and stretching your life beyond all things FC Dallas. Just being at tournaments like that is a big deal. So that's good for him. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if anybody hasn't seen it, go watch the video that the club put out of him talking about finding out that he got called up to the World Cup. And what a great kid, how genuine he seems, and his love of all things FCD is apparent and on the record. Yeah. And it's just, it's like 2 minutes long, and it's really heartwarming and sweet, and it's exactly what you want out of your somebody representing your club for the national team.
Yeah, his brother Nico played for FC Dallas in the academy when he was in the U.S. World U17 World Cup. So there's a good family connection along those lines. Justin Shea, who's technically still an FC Dallas player, is in the World Cup team. The weird thing about Shea is that since he got elevated to the first team at Hoffenheim back in January, he basically hasn't played. He was on the bench for 2 games, and other than that, he's been not in the squad. And then he got hurt and was missing a bunch. And even with the U23s, like once he wasn't playing for them because he was with the first team. And then he got hurt. And then after he got hurt, he's played 3 games basically this entire spring up until now. 2 starts and 1 bench appearance. So it's like, and for the U23s, nothing for the first team. So as much as we thought that they really liked him by promoting him to the first team, I start to wonder now at the end of June what's going to happen with his loan. Maybe this World Cup would be really good for him. It'd be interesting to see whether they use him as a right back or center back. Mm-hmm. And then the other person that made the club, the World Cup team, is Jonathan Gomez, who was the starting left back here at 15 for the North Texas when they won the inaugural USL 1 championship. Who's since gone on to Louisville and somewhere in Spain. I can't remember where it is off the top of my head. He's in the team. And then Pepe and Dante Sealy could have been in the team, but are not for different reasons. Pepe because he's starting for his team, and Sealy is not because the wheels are falling off that guy's loan at PSV Zhong. It's like since the end of May, he's played like 3 games or something. So, it's not it's not going well for either one of the loans. So we might see some reinforcements for FC Dallas this summer just because those loans might end. The Sealy loan, I can't imagine it's not ending and he's not coming back, although he might be shattered at this point. Would play for North Texas a bunch probably. And then Che, I really have no idea, honestly, what Hoffenheim thinks of him anymore because he hasn't played since January, as near as I can tell.
Is there any chance that guy wants to come back or has any in his mind that maybe coming back to Dallas would be good for him? Or do you think he's just dead set on trying to make his career in Germany?
Man, when he first came out to Dallas, he was really excited to be up and really excited to be there. And then as time went on, I think when he went to he was in the last group that went to Bayern Munich, and they never went back again. It's like I think he was one of the ones that was key to them having this, like, we're not sending our best kids over there anymore because they come back with their head spun. I think he was part of that because after that, he really didn't want to be here anymore. And there was the whole Bayern was interested and Dallas was like, well, you got to pay. And then Hoffenheim was interested. And so, okay, they lined that deal up. He does speak German. He does have a German passport. So he really, really wants to be over there. He might be, it's without getting a chance to talk to him or some of his people, it's going to be really hard to know where he's at. Dante Seeley's really not going to have much choice, but Che will be an interesting question. I honestly don't know whether he wants to come back or not. If he's going to come back, he's got to buy in hard because if he doesn't, it's going to be a disaster.
Okay. Well, congratulations to those either called up or maybe going. Who knows? That is a lot of fun. And when is the U20 World Cup?
It's like in 2 weeks.
And where is it?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I clearly
it's on
Isn't
TV.
it the one that got moved to Argentina?
Yeah, that's right. It is Argentina.
Yes, thank you.
That's why.
Hi, I'm the host of a soccer radio show.
Yeah. Well, where it is, the answer is on TV. Every game's at 2:00, and I think they're on Fox, so you'll be able to see every U.S. game. You won't be able to see Antonio probably, maybe one game, but then you'll see Che and Jogo for sure. That'll be fun. You'll see those guys.
All right, what you got cooking for North Texas Soccer Club, my buds?
Well, I did a thing this week where I sort of tried to evaluate all the signings for the foreign signings that the club has made over the years. I would have liked to have Dan's help on it actually, but he was out of country, so he left me high and dry on that one. And it's not good. Honestly, it's not a particularly good track record. And the thoughts on it were triggered by the fact that I was watching the game the other day, and most of the signings they've made this year, the foreign signings, are just terrible. There's one guy that's okay, Henry, the center back, who's, by the way, is a great example of how a guy's body between 16 and 20 can let you down, because at 16, he was captaining Brazil to the World Cup championship, and now he's been jettisoned to North Texas Soccer Club in Dallas. He's serviceable, but just not anywhere near quick enough for the MLS level. But then outside of that guy, it's like, they're just a disaster of foreign signings, in my opinion. But the upside is that the Herbert Indele, Herbie, as I like to call him, I don't know if anybody else calls him that, but I do, is really starting to show really well at wing. Like, the whole right back experiment seems to be over. He's turning into a Camungo, just tearing teams apart now at a wing. And the kid at left back, Rose, had 3 assists in the last game, and Hope Kudzu is having a great season like we expected him to. He's by far their best player. And when Nolan and Corsa go down, it looks a lot better than when they don't. So that team defensively is a disaster when they don't have Carrera or Ison in goal, or they don't have Corsa and Nolan. It's a mess. But at least offensively, 1 or 2 guys are making us look pretty decent. I know it's not about winning games down there; it's about developing players. But some of these foreign players are so bad. It's like, dude, just send them back home and play, academy kids or whatever. You're not winning anyway. You might as well play some kids and develop them. But again, this team's not necessarily all about that.
All right. Well, anything else we need to get into here for this episode of the pod?
There's a weird academy tournament coming up called the MLS Next Flex Tournament. It's important because
I feel like they spent more time conjuring up names for this thing than actually thinking about the actual product itself.
And they're all too similar, and they're all horrible. And it's like you say the wrong names all the time, and it's like it's just a disaster. But this tournament principle is kind of interesting because the idea is that everybody enters it. I think everybody enters it, and you can basically win your way into the playoffs. So it rewards a team that has worked really hard over the year and become good right at the end. So basically, you can like win this little tournament and get into the playoffs, even if you're like in 12th place. Does that make sense? So like it's made them a high pressure, high stakes, high reward tournament that anybody can get a shot at glory from, which is kind of an interesting way to do things.
So what happens if you're a team already in the playoffs and you win it?
If you win the flex, well, no, you do. And if you're already in the playoffs, say you're the first place team and you win the flex, then you're in on the flex, and the top 3, quote unquote, slide down a spot, and now the 4th place team is in the playoffs on the bottom. If you see what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So either like a team like out of the playoffs can win their way in, or if a team that's in wins, they slide down and bring in one more team. So it's a pressure kind of, it creates a pressure environment. It creates a higher level of play than it would if you were not in it, because of this winning mentality. And so that's kind of an interesting angle. They created it just for that.
I just remember last year covering MLS Next Cup for MLS, and doing like the research for all the teams and everything else. They have made it as convoluted as possible, so that it's almost impossible to follow week to week with the different tournaments, and whether they're playing at a tournament in real games or just scrimmages, and whether they're doing the select games now, and it's just even just following a single player through it's absurd.
Yeah, the problem is that they have depending on the age bracket, there are more MLS teams than other brackets. So some age brackets, you're only in a league, a conference with other MLS teams. And then maybe at the U16 or U19 level, you're in a conference with only one other MLS team and like 5 or 7 or 8 other teams that are not MLS teams. So every age group, you have a different kind of schedule, different kinds of standings. And then on top of that, you have these weird things like these flex tournaments, and you have like Dan says, a GA Cup, where they don't want people to travel down there and just play 3 games and go home. So they give you these, if you don't advance to the playoffs of that cup, then they give you these other sort of friendly scrimmages. And yet, if you're in your regular season and you're playing in a league that only has like 6 MLS teams in it, well, you need a lot more games than that. So you play all these other games that don't count. They're kind of like scrimmages that don't count in your standings. So like you'll get to the end of the season and the U17 team will have, because they play all MLS teams, they might have 15 games that count. And the U19 teams will get to the end of the season and they have 8 games that count. And every conference has a different number of teams, and every conference has a different number of MLS versus non-MLS. They've just made it incredibly complicated and, as Dan would say, stupid in terms of like making it impossible to keep up with what's going on. So I find it difficult even just keep up with the one FC Dallas situation. I couldn't even tell you what place all the various FC Dallas teams are in because their conferences are so convoluted. I know that the U19s are undefeated. I know that. And I know the U13s are undefeated. I know that. Other than that, couldn't tell you who's.
Yeah, I'm just going to state for the record that if Buzz Carrick can't figure out how this thing is going, then the whole thing is effed at its very core. Because that's ridiculous. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for your time. Dan, it's wonderful to have you back. I hope you had a really nice trip home, and I'm rooting for your Hatters to win promotion.
Thank you very much. Apparently, that a lot of the English media have already decided that the Middlesbrough-Sunderland final will be a big day for the North East. So hopefully we
prove them wrong.
I hope both those teams get eliminated.
Same.
Well, Dan, keep us. When are those games? Keep us in tune.
The first leg of the playoff for us is Saturday. It's 5:30 local. So that's what 10:30.
10:30 here. Yeah.
So this weekend.
That'll be the first leg. Second leg's I think Wednesday. They'll be on ESPN Plus, and then I can never remember when the final is. But we'll get to it. Can I throw a quick fun fact out?
Yeah,
I would love a fun fact.
I hadn't actually read Buzz's foreign thing because I was in foreign land at the time. Kazu is now teammates with King Kazu, the world's
Japanese old guy,
professional footballer. Yeah.
No way! Seriously, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're both Oliverense in Portugal. So I wonder who gets to fight over the Kazu jersey.
Yeah.
Well, no, hold on. Do the math. Am I correct in thinking that it's possible that King Kazu is old enough to be Kazu's grandfather?
He's 56. Kazu is 23.
Yes.
That'd be tight, but yeah.
That could be like, well, yeah, somebody could have had a high school prom accident in that mix somewhere, and the age could be close enough. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Hilarious. That is a fun fact. Thank you for that fun fact. Oh, here's another fun fact brought to you by the original Dustin El Jefe. Dallas is now not beaten an MLS team in the U.S. Open Cup since the year 2017.
Yeah, since Oscar.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that is telling in terms of part of that is the advent of the regional stuff. So Dallas keeps drawing Sporting Kansas City, who, by the way, takes the cup very seriously. Unlike Dallas, who says they do, Sporting Kansas City actually does. So Dallas loses to them a lot. And then the other teams that you get are Nashville or Houston or Austin. So it's like, to not be a single one of those teams since 2017 is mind-boggling for a club that professes to take that tournament very, very seriously.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that they do. Third Degree, the podcast, has been brought to you by soccer90.com. They got everything you want over there. FC Dallas, North Texas Soccer Club, U.S. Men's National Team. They've been great supporters of us. If you like us, support them, support us. Check out all the stuff they got over there. Soccer90.com. Use code Third Degree at checkout. 20% off your order. 3RDDEGREE. 20% off. Some exclusions apply.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Again, Dan, it is great to hear your voice, Buzz. Thank you, too, sir.
Of course, always. Thank you for hosting.
Yes, and happy, if you're listening to this on Friday, Tears of the Kingdom release day for all of you that are into Zelda. And we will speak to you again next week on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
Come on, you rip-roaring playoff winning actors.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.